Welcome to the Return to Roots Mil2Vet podcast, your guide through the journey from military to veterans in the community. This podcast is dedicated to service members, veterans, and their families. Get ready for inspirational stories and experiences generously shared by our amazing guests. Stand by for the sound of freedom. Before we dive into today's episode, we want to remind you of two essential resources, the 988 National Hotline for Mental Health Support and the MYTT 365 app available at mil2vet.com. Both are valuable tools to assist you in your transition journey. Now let's get to the show.
Return to Roots. Today we are interviewing a 12-year Coast Guard vet specialized in avionics and electrical on the H-60. It's a Black Hawk for all you Army Air Force people. Did a lot of his time up in Kodiak, Alaska, and made his transition out not too long ago. And now he currently is working real big with the first responders and veteran-based gaming. We'll talk a little bit about that. And let's just go ahead and kick it off here with Jordan Kirby.
Oh, I'm doing great. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me on. And yeah. Yeah, it's been an interesting transition from the Coast Guard. I mean, it's only been 9 months since I got out, so it's still kind of fresh.
Oh yeah, man. Totally. And that's like, you know, being out after service, bro, has been like one of the best things ever, man. One of the best things, like since sliced bread. Yogi, he doesn't get to experience that. He's still stuck in there.
He's working it.
Yeah, he's working it, man. He's working it. So let's go ahead and kick it off with the questions, bro.
Just real quick, man. I'm curious, man. One of the big things this is about is sharing information. So, hey, man, what podcasts or book are you listening to, or what books are you reading right now, man? What's feeding your brain?
So, podcasts that I'm listening to the Stoned Ape, if you've heard of them. And so it's kind of an interesting podcast. They've had like Grunt Style on there and a couple other people, Tim Jensen from Grunt Style. They're really big into the psychedelic healing, which is something that I got introduced to when I was starting to transition out of the Coast Guard. And that helped me a little bit. We can talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, just listening to them because their perspective on everything is just so different. It's just kind of fun to listen to. And as far as books, I actually have Life Worth Living that I got that for my birthday. It's by Miroslav Volf, and it's just sort of a different take on like everyday life, like what is important, how to determine what is important for you, how to live the life that you want to live. And it kind of just has like a generalized maybe guide or plan that this guy used to figure out what was important and to move forward with this life. I think it's all really interesting, and it's helped me.
No, man, that's a good deal. Now, a lot of times it just somebody out there listening in a similar situation. It's like, oh, dude, I got to get a read on some of that. That's right up my alley.
Yeah.
When you were getting ready to roll out of the Guard, so how'd you get into your transition mindset?
Oh, well, leaving the Coast Guard was one of the hardest decisions I ever had to make. Like, I joined the Coast Guard. I wanted to join every branch at one point. I think a lot of people did. Like, if you really looked at it, like, I knew I wanted to join the military. I looked at the Army. The Air Force hung up on me because I didn't have a college degree, but that's different. There was no Navy recruiter near me. The Marine Corps just growled at me over the phone. And so the Coast Guard was like, it just kind of made sense to me. So it was my passion. It's what I wanted. It felt like home. So when I decided to get out, it took me probably 3 years to decide that. And so by the time I made that decision, like, I want to get out, it was pretty immediate. Like, I was ready. I wanted to do everything that I had to do. I started looking into, it was like, we have the departing, whatever it's called when you depart the service. It's a mandatory class you have to take.
TAP class.
TAPS class. Yep. So I got into TAPS class. I was taking notes, signing up on the VA website, doing everything I possibly could. Like, I dove headfirst into it, watching YouTube videos from the VA, from other veterans. Like, I wanted to make sure that I did everything I had to do in the time that I had. And I had about 8 months or so since I made the decision to get out. It was either that or re-enlist. And so, yeah, it all happened. It took forever to get to that point, but it went by so fast. It was crazy. If I hadn't gotten to that mindset of wanting to get everything done, then I never would have had time for it.
So let me ask you this. What advice would you give yourself if you could go back in time before joining the military? What advice would you give yourself before joining the military to make your career successful?
I would say, oh God, that's difficult because there's a lot of things I'd want to say. I would honestly just say, don't do the popular thing. One of the reasons I got into the field I wanted to do is because I heard it was the elite. Like I had something to prove, I had that chip on my shoulder, and I spent so much time trying to be something I wasn't, that by the time I was who I needed to be and who I actually was, it was kind of too late. I'd wasted time. I jumped around to different jobs. So honestly, I would just go back and tell myself, like, just do the thing that I really know I wanted to do. And if I had done that, everything else would have worked out. But, I just had that little bit of, I don't know, early 20s mentality. I wanted to be the best. I wanted to be a top. Let me take on every bit of work I possibly can. Let me take on things that don't help me. Let me just try to impress everybody.
Spider monkeys.
Yeah, and it backfired on me. But I think everybody kind of has that too. Everybody does something that they regret at some point in their career.
Oh man, otherwise there's nothing worth learning from.
Yeah. With that, it leads me to my follow-up question, right? What advice would you give yourself and how early before transitioning out so that you have a successful transition and reintegration?
I would tell myself in the first year of the military, because at least for the Coast Guard, the way that they work is you don't really get, like other people have set A schools or set like technical training. For the Coast Guard, you get out and you're what they call a non-rate, which I think the Navy has non-rates as well. And it's like you just float around and you just have to, depending on which station you're at, you either get on the list within the first 6 months, or sometimes you'll wait a year or two to get on the list, depending on how fast the list is moving, needs of the job, all those kind of things. And so there's some people that'll wait 5 years just to go to tech school. I waited 4.5. Oh, wow. Yeah. I waited 4.5 years to become an E4. And that was one of the things, that was the biggest thing that kind of kneecapped my career, because I just wasted so much time doing other things. And if I could get to myself in the first year and just explain how it actually works and what's actually important, I think it would all work out. So it's just more like I went in without a plan, or I went in without knowing exactly what I wanted to do, and it took up more time.
Yeah, that's a pretty valuable lesson, because like even getting out, it may take you a while to actually figure out once you get out that whole entire, like, what do I do? And you already did that while you were in, so you kind of learned a lesson from that. And those of us that kind of like, oh, this is easy, may not have such an easy time getting out, because you could be the top of your field, you could be the biggest, baddest special force slinging mo jammer that's out there, or it could be like jammer. Yeah, but once you get out, then you're like, oh shit, what am I doing? It's real. It's real. It's going to be in your face. You may quit. Statistically proven that you're going to not be working in your job in a year when you get out. So that's something that everybody. Oh yeah, man.
I was like. There was a revolving door for the reemployment office, dude. I was rolling through that thing there for a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and if you don't like have that happen to you, then it may take you a long ass time in the profession that you're in to finally take off. So it's going to be one or the other. You're either going to get out, or it's going to take you a little while to. So just keep that in mind for everybody, our listeners. That's. So what did it take? And you may have found this while you were in. I know you, but I think you found more of it when you got out. When do you think you found your purpose?
I found my purpose the last year of my enlistment. And so not everybody does that. I know some people have that purpose in the military up till the day they get out, and then that transition's really hard for them. Like suddenly it's like you're saying, like suddenly it's real and you don't have that purpose, you don't have that direction or that structure. And I think that's something a lot of vets struggle with. For me, I'm really fortunate because I found my niche in the mental health field before I got out. I found that I could help other people, and that makes me feel good. And I founded a nonprofit with my buddies. And so we've actively been helping people, and it's sort of a slice of the military that has kind of helped keep some stability there. But yeah, that's that's complicated.
Yeah, no, and go ahead.
What turned you on to with your nonprofit, like with your particular nonprofit, to talk a little bit about that, and then how is it that you turned, oh, I'm going to use this group of people, this community for, like, is that your catalyst? Or talk a little bit about that.
Hey, before I interject, or before I'm going to interject, but before we get to that answer, let me get his contact information out so everybody that's on the show can get a hold of him. So what's the best way to get a hold of you?
So get a hold of my company or me personally?
You, man.
However
Your company, however you want to do it, brother.
So probably the LinkedIn profile. You can find me on Facebook. So LinkedIn is Jordan Kirby. And you'll see me in a business suit, and I have a bald head and stuff like that. Hence why I'm wearing the hat, because I'm going bald. And I am fine with it, whatever. It's just genetics. But yeah, you could do that. Or you could contact me through my company website, which is kriegergaming.com. So if you just type Krieger Gaming into Google, it'll come up, and you'll see a big emblem with an eagle attacking a snake. I don't have a picture of it anywhere around here. Actually, yes, I do.
Oh, man.
So you see this on Google? That's me.
Nice.
That's my group.
Nice.
So
yeah, that's my bad. I should have asked you for your logo so I could have thrown it up there for people that go on the show. But hey, no, that's great. So back to Nuccio's question. You want to ask that one more time, Nucci?
Oh yeah, it was so it was taking a look. I may or may not have been stuck in your nonprofit there a little bit, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. He was going after the gamers. That'd be the cat. What was it that turned you on to that? Or how'd you come about, like, mental health and gaming? How about that?
Well, that's kind of a deep conversation. Like, how deep do you want me to go into this? Because I'm gonna,
man, this is your show, bro.
All right, man. So basically, the last couple years, the last 5 years, I was in the Coast Guard. I was in Sitka, Air Station Sitka, struggling to make rank. I was stuck at E5. Like, there's the Coast Guard Aviation is a very small organization within the Coast Guard. And so only a very small amount of people ever get promoted. And so it's like very competitive to get up. I was going nowhere fast. There's people that had 5-6 less years than me that were 2 pay grades above me, which is pretty incredible. So it's just like all of these factors from my own choices. I took forever to make rank. I took forever to make E4, but everything kind of compacted during 2020, during the shutdown, during COVID. And in Sitka, we were not allowed to go outside. We weren't allowed to even go to restaurants. Like, you went to work and then you went home, and it was like that for a year. And so everybody was feeling it. Mental health was on the decline. We had, I think it was 3 suicides within a month. And one of those suicides was one of my friends from Kodiak. And I was already going through a really tough time. And when I found out my friend Hoke died, like, it sent me over the edge. It was actually, I found out, and I'm not embarrassed to say this, I found out in a grocery store in Sitka. I was talking to one of the pilots. The pilots told me who it was, and I broke down in tears in public. And it was just too much. And so when that happened, like, I had a plan to take my own life before that. Like, it just was, everything was going wrong. I was every bad thing that they teach you to look out for in suicide prevention in the military. I was hitting every one of those markers. I went and I asked for help, and I got ignored. Because basically what they said was everybody struggling. It's like, well, I need help. I need somebody to talk to. And it's like, well, we're not really worried about you. You know, like there's other people with worse things going on. And I was just thinking in that moment, I'm like, you know, it's really likely that Hoke went through this too, that those other guys, the ensign that committed suicide, or one of the lieutenants or one of the other aviators went through the same thing I'm going through right now. And I just felt that's absolutely unacceptable. And so where it kind of ties in with the gaming is I've had been part of a military gaming group for, I don't know, like a decade, since like 2009. And it's a group like Army, Air Force, there's cops, firefighters, and it was like a support group. Like we would get on there, we'd play games. Games in itself are therapeutic. There's a lot more studies on that nowadays where it's like it helps you unwind. It helps people with PTSD, depending on the game. Like don't play something that triggers your PTSD, but like people that play games, they relax, they get their mind out of that darkness, at least for a little while. And so games have this healing effect. And even more important is when you're playing games with friends, you're having that social aspect. And one of the biggest things in suicide is a feeling of isolation, feeling like you're alone. I felt that when I asked the Coast Guard for help and I got ignored. That's what I felt. And I realized in that moment that gaming and a gaming community could do real good. And so I talked to my buddies, we got together, and we decided that we were going to make this a real thing. We founded a nonprofit. We got people into the community. To date, we've helped over 120 individual people through our buddy check program, which is somebody comes in, they send a message, they're like, hey, I'm having a bad time. And then there's somebody in there, just somebody that has suicide prevention training or even something higher than that will respond and talk to somebody. And it's just the fact that we put ourselves out there to be there is what makes the difference. And that's kind of the inspiration for it. I knew I needed somebody to be there. There was no one there. And I realized gaming could do that for me, and it could do it for other people.
Dude, that's what's up, dude. That's what's up.
And I think you hit it on the nail. I mean, isolation is one of the first things, and we do it to ourselves. But we don't know that we're doing it. We don't know that we're isolating. We shame ourselves. We go through this whole vicious cycle of, you know, what's wrong with me? I'm the problem. And then when you go seek help and someone tells you, we're not worried about you, you're good to go, you're like, well, I am the problem. It is just me. So then you become even more and more down. And you're right. It does take someone that is trained to realize and recognize those signs. And if you don't have anyone or a network so that you can be open, it's extremely, extremely, extremely difficult to come out of that. And so I commend you for doing what you're doing and what you started. And because a lot of people, they just go through that and they're so, again, we go back to this whole shame thing. They don't want anyone else to know. So they kind of just fix it for themselves to a certain extent, but they do want to help people. But they don't know how to take the next steps. So that's awesome, man.
Oh, thank you.
You know, and that being in that moment can really affect you physically, right? I'm sure that was not only mentally, but also physically affected. And it just drives me nuts, man, that there are people out there that when you went up to them and you're like, hey, I need help. Just the fact that you ask, like if anybody asks for help, like that's a statistical low number. So if anybody asks help, I just can't believe leadership would ever do that. You know, like, it's unbelief. It happened.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that stigma is still in their heads that, hey, that person's not actually sick. They're just trying to get attention. But they have no clue the whole entire mental aspect and how, you know, even if you have somebody that's commonly sick over and over again, I bet you they're going through something because it has physical changes on their body. You can tell whenever somebody is having those kind of things because they look different, just like we were physical beings, you know, and whenever our mental state changes, the way we look changes as well. You've seen somebody looking vibrant, that's a real thing. So I just can't believe that somebody in leadership would do that. And whoever they are, man, I really hope they got educated on that afterwards, and they never personally experience anything that's going to be a shock to them. But most likely, it's just going to hit them in the face one day. That's rough, man. So what kind of games do you guys play, man? I'm a gamer, man. I love games. I grew up playing games. So what kind of games do you guys play?
Chris over here trying to poach a spot on the team.
That's what he's doing.
Hey, put me in, coach.
He's like waiting for that attrition to kick in. He's just like, I got a spot right up over here. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Oh man, we play a little bit of everything. All the Call of Duties. We got Modern Warfare 3, Modern Warfare 2. We got people on Destiny, Battlefield 2042, Minecraft, Valheim. We got people that play train simulators. Like,
what about Candy Crush, bro? You got Candy Crush? Come on.
There's people that play that. There's a whole mobile gaming section in our community. So like, it's just everywhere. Like, people play everything, and they'll come in and just talk about like, hey, does anybody play this game on phone? And it's like, yeah, there's somebody else, and then they start playing together. And there's too many games to list. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
Dude, so like when you're in the middle of gaming and stuff like that, and guys are out there, you're on a mission, you're gonna go do your thing, like, do you ever, like, in the middle of, I mean, obviously you're doing it for the for the group camaraderie and getting the guys together to help out, but like, do you ever pause, or are there ever just like the random, hey man, to talk about what it is that you're there for? Or is it like how do you mix the why with the what you're doing?
Well, that's the best part about video games, and the fact that most of this is online, is that there's that little bit of anonymity, because people don't use their real names. They use gamer tags, and like, everything's a little bit more anonymous. So people are more open to talking about things because they're not really putting themselves on the spot. And sometimes people will come out and say something and then they disappear and we can't get back in touch with them. Unfortunately, that's their choice. Like, we're there for them, but people get embarrassing and some people aren't ready to talk about things, and that's perfectly fine. But
you could have been a median for them, those people that are using a tag, and then that could have been like a great way for them, even though you're like, well, what the hell happened to this guy? You don't know, like that and wow, this is a hard word to say. Anonymity. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. That anonymity is probably something that they needed, and you were able to pour into them about why they should. And, hey, man, we actually care. Why don't you come back on and log in? You don't have to tell me nothing. Just come back in and play with me again. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think the anonymity is the thing that helps us the most, because I'll be the first one to admit I didn't want to ask for help. Like, up until that point, like, I had the mentality, like, I've been fine up until now. Like, I'll be fine. I can, man up and just get through this and all that. And so when I finally got to time to actually asking for help, it was really scary, because on the one, I knew I'd never fly again. And on the second part, it's like, what else is going to happen? If I say something wrong, am I going to be like put in a straitjacket? Like, I don't know. So, and so it's just like, even though that's unrealistic at that time, it felt real enough. Like, that felt like a real enough possibility because everything else was going wrong. And so, yeah, it just helps. It just helps being able to to go back to your question, Nooch. It's, we'll be playing in a game and everything will be fine. And we're just joking and smoking. And then sometimes somebody will just be like, hey, this thing happened. And they'll just like start talking about something bad or something that's been on their mind. And then we'll kind of keep talking about that, still kind of play the game. And then just sometimes the game kind of fizzles out, and that's perfectly fine. Or sometimes we just continue playing. And so it just kind of happens organically, to be honest. And that's nice.
And you kind of got to let it go like that too, because if it's just organic, no pressure. Hey man, if it happens, dude. We're here. That's why this is here.
Exactly.
So, man, how much similarity do you see between the first line and first responders? With what we got going on in the service. haven't been. I only did a little bit of fire service, but we worked with the cops a lot, and there's that. But I know there's some. But in your experience there in gaming, what's the similarities between the guys in the first line and the service?
As far as like mentality goes, veterans and first responders are exactly the same. It's the same kind of person. Like, we have the idea that we want to help somebody, we want to serve our country, we want to do something good in the world. It's the same kind of people. It's just the job that's different. And the worst part about the first responder field is that they don't have the resources that veterans have. And so they don't have a unified like helpline. They don't have a unified like cops nonprofit. You'll find law enforcement or fire service nonprofits, but they're generally for specific departments or specific regions. And so if somebody needs help and there's not one of those things in their area, they have to rely on basically their interdepartment EAP, employee assistance.
Yeah.
And frankly, nobody trusts that, because a lot of those guys that run that are the stereotypical hard-charging military guy that doesn't have any idea what mental health is, but does the field because it looks good on their career and responds to somebody that asks for help like they responded to me. Like, oh, you don't actually need help. Man up. It's like, no.
Bro, so that's crazy.
Struggle.
Yeah.
I was a volley for a long time, dude, and that's probably one of the single best observations that I've ever heard, which you just pointed out there. There's no unified thing.
See, and that makes sense. And that's why like us, I know our community, that's why we usually typically get along with their community as well, as because we have that same mindset of service. The only difference, like you were saying, is, one, they don't have quite the same benefits as us. So, hey, veterans out there, we have it better than someone.
Right.
Yeah, we do.
Just keep that in mind. It could always be worse. You could be a first responder, but you could be police officer, but they're not going to get the same quality of service that we have. So that's why it's instrumental to highlight that as well. And dude, thanks for pointing that out, Nooch. That's great.
So with your gaming, right? You talked about the dynamics. You talked about how you started it, and now let's talk a little bit about what your plans for the future are. What do you want to do? What kind of events and stuff like that? I'll let you talk into it. I know you gave us a little quick preview, and I'm excited for our audience to hear about it, and also to say that Return to Roots is here to support in any way and capacity, without Chris playing too much, but.
He's distracted.
Yeah.
That's the worst part about webinars and stuff. You get caught.
Yeah.
But yeah, the kind of events that we're doing online events now. We're working with a lot of other veteran organizations that do similar things. And I can't say which ones those are just yet because the ink isn't dry. But let's just say that almost every veteran organization that I've come across has been very excited to work with us. And all of us have the same goals to help veterans. And so we're going to start doing online gaming nights. Like, anybody across the country can get on. Whatever the game is, we'll try to accommodate. But most importantly, we're doing in-person events starting in Southern California. We're doing American Legion Post 291 in Newport Harbor. We're building a gaming lounge for them. And so what we're doing is we're going to buy a bunch of televisions, a bunch of Xboxes, a bunch of games, controllers, let between 16 and 32 people play at the same time, have food, drink, and resources on hand for anybody that wants them. But overall, it's just to get people together and to have a good time, similar to like what the Irreverent Warriors do with their Silky Hikes. You just get people together, you do an event, you have a good time. That is exactly the same thing we're doing. What we want to do is we want to build those gaming lounges at every major post across California, and then eventually across the country. We want to have a veteran gaming night that people from all around can compete against each other and just have a good time and feel like part of that veteran community again. And that's the most important thing for us.
I love it. Hey, there's no like sneak run at the end of this or anything, right? It's not like hey, we get a social, ice cream social is what we used to call it. And then you get tricked into like punishment by like having
no. That was surfing turf, dude.
No,
Oh,
it's not a military morale day. It's a real
Yeah.
it's a real thing.
Military morale day.
Oh,
Dude,
yeah.
it's crazy you bring that up because I bounced around in a couple of different states since I've been out. And there's one thing in common is just with these big VSOs, the VFW, the American Legion, they're sitting here wondering, hey, how come we can't get anybody in and this, that, and the other? And it's like the boomers are leaving, man. And that was their big thing. And every time I went into one of these places, I'm always asking the same shit. What's your Wi-Fi? What is that? Where's your freaking thing to try to attract these young guys? Because if you're freaking sitting here thinking that it's about the old back in the 60s and 70s of freaking smoke-filled bingo parlors, man, those days are gone, man. You got to, if you want to attract, you got to start letting loose of the old ways of thinking, because it's dude, time to go. And you got to get those things. You got to get those beanbags in there. You got to get those places. And I don't think I had this discovered down in IB when I was stationed in San Diego. You know, it's just like, bro, VFW, you can get a lot more up. And you got, you know how many freaking junior sailors and Marines live right here, you know? And it's just deaf ears, man. And oh my gosh, for years I've been sitting there trying to explain that to some of these different posts. Dude, you killed it. That's boss, dude. I hope you kill it. I hope that thing grows. Like when you said Southern California, dude, I was like, oh, please be down there in IB. Get those guys too.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's funny you mentioned that, because some of my guys, some of my officers in the organization have reached out to local posts, and some of these American Legion posts are like, gaming? That's not real. Real healing comes from like shuffleboard or something like that. And it's like, come on, man. Like, just heal however you gotta heal. Yeah,
man, you guys all got fake knees. We hear you shuffling all the way over there.
No, man.
The other thing what you said was the whole entire thing about the VFW, what Newt was saying. Hey guys, guess what? Here's a hint to you guys. The majority of us don't smoke. The majority of us don't do that kind of stuff once we get out. We are a little bit more chillaxed. Don't get me wrong, man. Throw back a beer, relax, but we're not getting smashed like we were. You know what I'm saying? We're not looking for the Thai show. Oh, sorry, Coasty. Probably doesn't know what I'm talking about.
Oh, he knows. He's smiling. That's why he's got that angle with the camera. He's smiling. So in all fairness, Chris, the places aren't all smoked out like, you know, like back. And that was kind of a cliche example, but I mean, it's very much kind of like, it's kind of like that was a generation, you know, but you know, things change with alcohol. You can't buy smokes anymore in the ship store. You can't, you know, booze, you know, what was it called? The de-glamorization initiative about 20 years ago, you know? So I'm glad those changes happened.
Yeah. Honestly, like that's whatever we set up right now, however the American Legion or VFW is that we set up for this generation, it's not going to be the same for the next. It's just, it changes. Yeah.
The willingness to adapt by those that are in charge or running stuff, that's going to be what makes it happen, though, because when that first person buys in, it's like, you know what, we got to try this out. Let's check it out. Oh, look, hey, man, people are coming to, and then when they see it working, but man, when people put the stiff arm up, it's like you said, oh, gaming? Yeah, we ain't going to do all that. Dude, what's the average age right now? Born after 1990? You know? It's...
Yeah. Well, so when you were in the Coast Guard, you're an aviation guy, I heard you say, right?
I was.
Man, all four of us are aviation guys, so
perfect.
Yeah, we're all maintainers in here. So
two of us are on the beloved Seahawks, though.
Yeah, Seahawks, go Hawks.
Talk about the airplane,
what about
not the team.
the Kraken?
I got you.
So, what was it like when you got out, man? Like, where did you go? Like, where'd you go to work at first when you first got out? What was that? What was that like, man?
Getting out was hard. The last couple months, like basically I'd lived with my girlfriend, like fiance, for 4.5, 5 years. So that relationship was over. I was leaving the Coast Guard, so that was over. I couldn't stay in Alaska, which was my home. And I had to leave everything I knew to move back to California to live with my family because it was the cheapest option available. It's like I had nowhere else to go. So I got out. I started looking into the post 9/11. And so now I'm just a full-time student. Like I haven't worked since I got out, but luckily I'm doing college. And so I have a little bit of income coming in and I'm just knocking out my career because I want to try to be a park ranger. But man, the first 5 months of getting out just went by in a blur. I was just,
Yeah, it does.
to me, it was so difficult. Just, I kept waking up every day at 6 a.m., no matter if I had an alarm or not. Like I had that overwhelming feeling like I'm supposed to be doing something. I'm not doing something. I have something to do. I'm supposed to be somewhere. And realistically, no, I don't. I'm exactly where I need to be right now. But I had to like deprogram myself. I had to get rid of that military mindset to just focus on school and to focus on building my new life and where I want to go. And it was hard. And I would think that it pretty much took the whole first year for me to do that. So like up till this point, from January until now, I'm still changing. I'm still getting used to not being in the military. Oh, this is really not an easy answer to it.
So would you feel, or would you say that you have been in this fight or flight mode since you've essentially got out and you've used the GI Bill as a soft landing pad until you kind of figure out what the next step is?
I think so.
Okay.
That and having some VA healthcare where I don't have to worry about that. That's those little things, those benefits that they taught us to do before we got out, before we transitioned, made that transition so much easier. And so it's like, honestly, it was just doing exactly what these people said and following through and getting the VA stuff and getting the post 9/11 gave me that soft landing pad so that I could, so I could deprogram, I could become a civilian again, get away from all the trouble I had in the military, and then just grow myself into the person I want to be. And so, yeah, it's been up until now where I have had that fight or flight, but that's slowly going away. And it's like I'm more relaxed. Like I feel good about things. Like when I first got out, I was super high strung, like very anxious. Like I got to get things done right now. And it's like, yeah, the civilian world doesn't work that way at all.
No.
Like everybody's very relaxed. Everyone's very like, you get it done, but you do it in a different way than we're used to in the military. It's just a hard change. It's like, you know, you're in one life and now you're in the next. It's no matter what class they teach at the end of it, whether it's TAPS or something else, it's like it never really prepares you for it. It's like it's still, there's always a culture shock.
It is too. Like one of the things we joked about on a couple of shows is when you step over that blue line for the last time, and you remember the first time you cross it and the last time you cross it, but you don't remember any time in between. And I can still vividly remember leaving Silverdale up in Puget Sound. I was like, wow, this is it, huh? And dudes just sitting there, peace out, bro. Good to see you again. When he freaking signed my DD-214, it's kind of cool to run into an old PN buddy, you know?
Yeah.
And he's like, bye, Felicia. Good luck.
Yeah, that's that moment, like, because right now I'm in my 3-4 month window, and it's just kind of weird, man. Like it's hard for me not to wake up and get going. Luckily I do have kids, so that kind of gives me like a get up and I start getting them going towards their things. I'm like, go, let's go, let's go, let's go, you know, over and over and over again. And I kind of had to dial that back a little bit. At first, you know, I was like, now I'm like, hey guys, here's the checklist. Is step one done? You know, oh, make bed. Okay. You know, check. You know, so I kind of broke it down a little bit more, and I'm kind of learning myself, you know, because I used to tell sailors something to do and they would just do it, bro. It would just get done.
Dude.
You know, like I would tell, hey, first class, I need this done. Hey, chief, I need this done. And it would just get done, man. And that doesn't happen in real life, dude.
No, it does not. And that's been a hard adjustment for me too.
Dude,
So,
that's
yeah,
that is weird. You know, we just get, and a lot of times you don't even need to be told to do. You just know that that's what that. Dude, like my ex and I, we used to be talking about that sometimes. She'd come back and she was just ready to kill some of her team. I'm just like, fire her. Just freaking fire that guy. Why are they still freaking working for you? Kick them out. You know, you can't just do that. You got to come. I was like, no, you're here freaking losing your mind because this person's being a boat anchor. Just why are they still employed? Like, Nooch, calm yourself, dude. Just doesn't work like that out here like that. And I'm just like, oh my God, you know, and for four of us, we're just like, no, man, get her done, man. We got to go. And now it's just kind of like, yeah. Now Jordan's like, yeah, welcome to the party, pal. It's like that all day.
Yeah. Especially in the nonprofit field, because we're mostly online. So it's like, you can tell really quickly who is prior military, because that's how the mentality is still. Like, I'd be like, hey man, can you do this for me? And then sometimes I'll forget about it. I'll forget that I asked him. And then a couple days later, a week later, it's like, hey man, I did all of this. And then here's a bunch of other stuff I did. And I'm like, oh, cool. And then there's some people, particularly civilians, which they're great people. And I'm glad they're here, but I'll ask them to do something and they'll do like a little bit of it. And then I'll be like, oh, hey, why didn't you do all of it? And it's like, oh, sorry. Like, I didn't know exactly what you wanted. I didn't know if I could do this, or I didn't know how much you wanted me to do. And it's like to me, like that was so weird. I'm like, well, just do all of it. But it's not even that. It's not even me just saying that. Like they legit don't understand. And it's like, I got to train. Yeah. And it's like, that's something I took advantage of, or I took for granted, I should say, in the military, because we're all trained so well to do our job and everybody else's job that it flows naturally. But the civilian world is not like that.
Not my job.
Yeah, basically.
And unfortunately,
it's like the worst three words ever.
Right. And then you go into yourself again, you beat yourself up, and whenever you're dealing with a civilian and you're like, well, am I being too strong? Am I being too harsh? Do I need to put on the kids' gloves and say, hey, buddy, you know? But then if you do that, you're condescending. You're like, well, I can't win on this thing. So I'm still on the other side. I'm still active duty. So that's still a big thing, right? I haven't really been able to transition out. However, I can tell you that due to the circumstances, I'm going through the med board scenario, but that has been, and thanks to this podcast and the people that we've talked to, that has been extremely eye-opening to be able to set that foundation so I am able to transition as best as possible. If I could honestly, you know, be the president for a day, right? Or anyone with that kind of stuff. And I think that's part of what the new program was supposed to be about, to help members transition out, get a job for 6 months and get out. But if it would be to put that into better organized and make that mandatory for everybody. 6 months, de-plug and go into figuring out what you're going to do, right? You know, it's funny, the special forces, I was able to have a conversation with a couple of them, and that's what they do, right? That is what they do. You're still getting muster, you're still going through everything, but they have mandatory, aside from the TAPS class, they have mandatory training that they go through. They have other organizations that help them succeed, and it's mandatory for them to go through all that so that they can find their footing, they can find their job, they can find their transition and everything, and also their mental health is well taken care of. Understanding is very expensive, right? So that's always a thing that is very difficult to justify, right? Especially to some civilian that doesn't even know half of how this transition works. And speaking of civilians and awesome civilians, I'd like to give a shout out to Christine, who put us in contact, right? For allowing this connection to happen and for being a great supporter of the veterans, and not just that, but also Return to Roots and everything that we do.
Yeah, Christine's awesome. So that's a great shout out. She is doing a lot of stuff, and she put me in contact with you and a bunch of other people, and everyone that I've talked to is just so passionate about helping veterans, helping first responders. Like, she's top notch. I'm glad I met her. I met her actually through Dave DeRokers, the NFL football player, the former, and he's awesome too. Yeah. So yeah, go Seahawks. But
we love him.
Yeah, you going to the first and goal tournament on the 18th of March.
18th of March. I'll try to be there. I think I will.
Yeah.
Bro.
Yeah, I'll talk to him.
Go, bro. We're going to be there. Mil2Vet is going to be there. So, bro, come on out, man. Come on out and wear one of your buddy check shirts. You know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're going to be there in force. We're going to be talking to people about their transition, sharing the stories, brother. And I think we're getting pretty much to the end. Does anybody have any saved rounds and alibis?
Nah, man. Just it was kind of fun. I'm sitting there. I got my questions written down, and he comes out the gate answering like all three of them like a boss.
Yeah. No, Jordan, you definitely have that enthusiasm, and you have your passion in spades. So, like, seriously, brother, like, thanks for coming on here. Thanks for talking about the gaming community. Thanks for talking about your transition a little bit, brother. And dude, like, our listeners that are on here, Jordan's story is really awesome. You know, he's in school, but he doesn't just sit there and play video games. No, he sits there and plays video games with the intent of helping. You know what I'm saying? So that's awesome, man. And that you're doing this, you're not just like a social media person that has like, oh, look at me, I'm so cool, so suave. You know, I got my gaming console, all that stuff. No, man, you're actually impacting those that are around you. So that's awesome, dude. Thanks for being an impactor.
Yogi, what are you doing?
Yeah. You like that?
I mean,
laughing at Chris trying to say suave.
Hashtag Yogi Smash. Anyways, brother. Hey, Jordan, thanks. Thanks for coming on here, man. It's been an awesome time hanging out with you, brother. And yeah, I'm gaming with you. Send me, I got all your stuff. I'm going to connect and try to hop on some games. So
awesome, man.
I'll try not.
Thank you for having me on here. This has been awesome.
Yeah. So, all right, to our listeners that are out there, Mil2Vet tribe, thank you for listening to this. All right, so this is your transition. It's not all rainbows and unicorns out there. It's your transition. Take charge of it. Mil2Vet.